Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Big K.R.I.T called K.R.I.T is Here. So I'll be very honest folks, when I heard where Big K.R.I.T was planning to go with this new album, my level of surprise was split between greatly and not at all. Because on the one hand, hearing that Big K.R.I.T was trying to make a mainstream accessible trap album, it seemed like the last thing you would have expected from him. I get that Def Jam royally mismanaged his deal and his promotion, and that his music has always had more crossover potential, but why in the nine hells would he go independent to just release the same style of music in an oversaturated subgenre of hip-hop? Especially coming off of Forever Is a Mighty Long Time in 2017, you would have thought that Big K.R.I.T would delve further into southern, more experimental territory that the label might balk at, not release yet another album for the pile that would wind up getting overshadowed by acts in the same subgenre that might be weaker talents but have better distribution and publicity. But on the other hand, I kinda get it. Trap is a variant of southern hip-hop after all, and Big K.R.I.T has always been one to point out in how that style's been co-opted by other regions and even genres time and time again. So in essence, if he was gonna try and make the definitive trap album to put everyone else to shame coming out of the South, frame it as more of a sequel to his 2010 mixtape, well okay, it wouldn't be how I would best push his talents and his versatility, but I would understand the appeal, especially if he was looking to flesh out his set list with a bunch of bangers for any festivals ahead. I was a lot more alarmed that it didn't look like he had many production credits this time around, and had included a couple songs from earlier mixtapes. Seems like a bit of a questionable move for a guy whose projects have always run long, but alright fine. What do we get from K.R.I.T is Here? Well, here's the thing. I was expecting to be a lot more disappointed with this album than I actually am. I'm certainly not as aghast as I was at the last Kyle Craft album that I reviewed, for instance, just a couple days ago. Now, part of that might come with the benefit of adjusted expectations and the fact that Big K.R.I.T has put out projects in the past I would describe as less than great. But I also think this album is suffering a lot in comparison with Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. Similar to how Zoo is being compared a little bit unfavorably and unfairly to Taboo from Denzel Curry. Because as a project, this is obviously aiming a fair bit lower than what was delivered in 2017. It's designed to play to a looser trap party vibe. It's aiming to do something different. And believe it or not, I can actually accept that. But where I take more issues with this project is that I'm not quite sure it goes off as effectively in that lane as it could, which means it's only good instead of being great. And I think this conversation, it has to focus most initially on composition and structure. Because while I've been saying for years that Big K.R.I.T could easily make mainstream accessible projects, he's always seemed a little bit more ambitious in his framing and contemplative in his content than to target the basic material. It's why his songs tend to have a broader, more southern-focused reference pool, and his albums nearly always run long, like this one absolutely does. That's one big reason why pacing, momentum, and vibe is so important on the breezier, lighter albums that are not really trying to be as lyrical, which becomes a bit of a tougher bargain when this album stretches towards the hour-long mark, and it's one reason why Denzel Curry opted with Zoo to get in and get out as quickly as possible. It's also one reason why I probably would have cut songs from previous mixtapes in order to trim this down, like Energy and Learn from Texas. At 19 songs, especially when the back half gets a little bit more mid-tempo and moody, with a little bit less thought than we'd expect from Big K.R.I.T, it probably would have kept up some of the momentum, especially when the songs that were from the previous mixtapes were not really that great. And while I'm in that territory, alright, look, I'll admit that once I clued into the lower stakes of the project, I was a little bit more accepting of the content that felt a little flimsier, because Big K.R.I.T can still paint a pretty vivid picture with a command of trap flows and cadences that feels natural, even if his delivery is a fair bit less visceral. But there's that, and then there's songs that might as well double as album filler, where he's punching significantly below his weight class, like I'll Been Waitin' and Outer Space and I Made with Yella Beezy on the hook. Yeah, they might knock a little bit harder in the production, but Big K.R.I.T has made more tuneful and interesting songs with that approach. Both here, with songs like the crashing drums coming off Believe, and especially in the past, even on projects that were a little bit more serious and higher stakes. And if I'm being honest, if I'm disappointed with this project in any major way, it would probably come most through the production. Because Well, you would think that Big K.R.I.T would make up for lightweight content with even flashier, more bombastic instrumentals, which, yeah, they occasionally come through, but the bigger issue might be inconsistency. I might not be the biggest fan of the whole chipmunk soul approach with the chopped up samples on the opener K.R.I.T Here, and I do think that A1 flipped the analogous sample of Make It Easy on Yourself better on his album that dropped earlier this year than Big K.R.I.T does with Make It Easy. But you know what? The soulful backdrop, with has the texture, the greater focus on live percussion, that gives him a ton of flavor. It suits his voice. And when this album is at its best, like with the more developed percussion, organ, and piano touches opposite Baby Rose on Every Time, the faster jingling drums and the pianos driving Life in the Sun, and especially the big jazzy flair with the trumpet on Mississippi, thank God this album ends strong. These are really the great moments for Big K.R.I.T. And he's always had his slicker side, and while obvious might be a little bit more low-key with the fizzy pop, it makes up for it with Rico Love, who I actually thought had a pretty good hook. And I was even kind of open to the G-Funk tones that are obviously indebted to Andre 3000 on Blue Flame Ballet. It's just kind of a shame you also get cuts of the ugly, shrill synths on Family Matters, and the off-key, lo-fi guitar blend and watery auto-tune from Wolf DeMichaels, who also produced the former song and just sounds flat awful whenever he shows up, frustratingly handling the hook with the otherwise pretty solid J. Cole collaboration Prove It. And you know what? At least when we get some watery tones on a cut like Addiction with Lil Wayne and Saweetie, as much as an utterly ridiculous sex song from everyone involved, at least this is the potential to sound a little bit more inviting. I see the appeal, even if it's not really my thing. And this takes us to the content itself. And look, I'll give credit when Big K.R.I.T sticks the landing well, because even if K.R.I.T Here and Make It Easy, they ride more on ego than anything, he's got the charisma and bounce to make them feel more infectious. And Obvious is the sort of earnest hip-hop love song that I've always kind of liked. And while I won't call songs like Believe or Life in the Sun or Mississippi incredibly deep, especially for Big K.R.I.T, more focus on showcasing his emergence from hardship to represent the South and then build his business, where I'd be more surprised if Nipsey Hussle wasn't mentioned. But there's enough detail and intensity and good wordplay in order to hook me in. Similar case for Prove It with J. Cole, asking those who would really trust and invest in his career to put their money where their mouths are. And J. Cole then highlights one of his first actual fans that did it. That was a nice touch. Hell, I'd even say something similar for Blue Flame Ballet, which there's this dancer who is just so damn elegant that Big K.R.I.T has to marvel at her skills, adding a veneer of class to your average strip club song that helps it stand out a little bit. But there is a twofold problem in going broader and lighter with the subject matter, and the first comes with a niggling issue that I've been observing across even parts of Forever Is a Mighty Long Time, especially on the second disc. Big K.R.I.T has a frustrating tendency to default to broadly sketched, quasi-messianic platitudes full of slightly undercooked metaphors of space and especially light that, after a certain point, they just start to run together. They don't mean more than the sum of their parts. And when you have a project like this that isn't nearly as introspective to get those aspirational platitudes some real gravitas, or instrumentation bombastic enough in order to back it up, it can make some of those mid-tempo songs have a little less weight. That makes you wonder why he didn't just go for the straight, ignorant bangers instead. It's got the feeling of trying to coast on vibes, but is still trying to also feel more meaningful than it is. And more often than not, that sort of balancing act just feels a little undercooked. But to wrap this up, look, I understand why Big K.R.I.T made this album, but it's an album that reflects the wrong sort of prioritization to me, especially since he went independent and won over so many new fans by making such a rich and expansive work. And while a project like this was probably cheaper and quicker to produce and assemble, I'd also argue it could backfire more than he would expect, exasperate and disappoint the fans who have seen him do more, especially coming off of his major label, and when he's not under the same obligation to chase hits. And again, I don't think this is a bad project. Hell, I would argue the weakest cuts here, they're more bland and interchangeable than outright awful, and there are a smattering of solid to really great songs, but I also struggle to say they would sit among his best. And while I'd say that I'm less disappointed than most, I'm not going to begrudge anyone who says this fell far short of their expectations. Which is why, while I'm giving this a strong 6 out of 10, I'm a little bit more hesitant to recommend it, especially in comparison with his better albums in the past, even some of his mixtapes. Now, if you're curious, you got an hour free, it's worth a listen. It's fine enough. Just temper some of those expectations. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, this was a little disappointing, but I guess I was better able to adjust for this than I was for Kyle Craft last time, so yeah, it's still good. I still enjoyed it. If you want to buy or stream it, links down there below. Tell me what you thought in the comments, and I got the poll up there for all you diehard Big K.R.I.T fans. Tell me how wrong I am. Even though from what I've seen of a lot of diehard Big K.R.I.T fans, they're a little bit more lukewarm on this than most. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you're looking for the last episode of Billboard Breakdown, where sadly I think a lot of this album will not be hitting the Hot 100, it's on the new channel. As I've said a number of times before, it's on the card right over here. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.